What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Border City Kids Unsolved. I am your host, Brian, and today we are talking about another unsolved case, and probably in this case it's going to remain unsolved forever, but it's one of the biggest art heists ever in history, and this one is dating back to 1990, so this is about 36 years old now. It's past that 35-year threshold, and this one's almost out of reach, and we're going to talk about some of the suspects, we're going to talk about some of the events, some of the coincidences that took place that night, which makes this kind of unbelievable, and we're going to talk about some people that maybe were thrown into the spotlight at the time, but unable to prove whether they had something to do with it. So this is going to remain one of those unsolved cases. So thank you for joining me on Unsolved today. I'm your host, Brian, and let's get into today's art heist on the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum from 1990. So imagine walking into one of the most breathtaking art museums in the world. Sunlight streams through a lush Venetian-style courtyard. Marble statues and ancient tapestries line the walkways, but as you enter the upper galleries and look at the ornate, heavy gilded frames hanging on the walls, a chill hits you and your hair stands on end on your neck because there's one thing that really stands out. They are completely empty frames, totally gone, unbelievable at one of the most guarded art museums in the world. So they are completely empty. The canvases weren't completely removed for restoration. They were brutally cut with utility blades. So think about that. These are not just taken out of their frames. They actually took some of these and took like some knives and actually cut through some of these and took them, and they're gone. And these are some of the most prized possessions in the world, worth millions and millions of dollars. The total estimated value at the time is over $500 million. So this is not a small deal. This is a very big deal. And this is back in 1990. Now, no arrests have ever been made. Not a single piece of art has ever been recovered from this incident. And today we're going to take a deep dive into the entire case. We're talking about 81 minutes of chaos inside the galleries, the rogues galleries so there's some mafia suspects, and we're going to talk about where the investigation stands today. So let's get into it. So to understand how a $500 million heist happens, you first have to understand the place itself and the woman who built it. And this is going back 102 years ago, back to 1924. So there was a woman by the name of Isabella Stewart Gardner, and she was an eccentric, fiercely independent Boston socialite. When she passed away in 1924, she left behind a stunning Venetian-style palace filled with her art collection. And this is her own personal collection that she had at the time. But her will that she had left after she passed away was extraordinary. It was a rigid stipulation. The collection was to remain exactly as she arranged it, down to the very last detail. So it was to not be touched after she passed away. And if anyone moved a single picture or altered a display that she had set up, the entire estate was to be liquidated and given to Harvard University. So she had all this set up. So we're going to jump about 66 years later in March of 1990. That rule had created a beautiful time capsule of her, and an absolute security nightmare for the people who had to guard it and make sure nothing ever changed. So let's talk about the security infrastructure. It was dangerously outdated. Okay, there's red flag number one. There were no surveillance cameras to record. Think about that. This is some of the most expensive art in the world. Not a single surveillance camera recording video. The building relied on basic motion detectors at the time, and they had an internal alarm system and two young, under-trained night watchmen patrolling the dark hallways. On the night of Saturday, March 17th, okay, and this is St. Patrick's Day, March 17th back in 1990, Boston was very alive with their celebrations. So the bars were packed, the streets were rowdy, and the Boston Police Department had its hands full. So they were busy with all these people who were being rowdy in the streets, causing chaos. So they were kind of sidetracked somewhere else. Inside the museum, two night watchmen were on duty. So there was a 23-year-old Rick Abath, He was a hippie rock musician who regularly turned up to work in tie-dye, and his partner was Eric Hansen. Okay, so now we're going to skip to 1 a.m. So Abath was conducting his regular sweep of the galleries. Okay, just protocol. It's 1 a.m. Every night he does this at 1 a.m. when he's guarding, so it's just regular protocol. So during his walk, he did something very unusual, and this is what was picked up after the fact that this all went down. So he walked to the side entrance of the museum, the Palace Road door, and he opened it very quickly and closed it briefly. Abath later told federal agents that he opened it just to verify that the latch was actually locked, so there would be no issues. But investigators at the time had a feeling that this was for something else. Was it a signal for someone waiting outside in the dark? Was that like a signal for them to come on in? So here's where things get strange. Only 24 minutes later, at 1:24 a.m., the intercom at the security desk buzzed. Okay, and Abath answered the speaker, and there were two men waiting outside wearing dark police coats and official-looking caps. And they claimed they were Boston police officers responding to a disturbance in the courtyard. Okay, and there was nothing really going on at the time. There was no disturbance in the courtyard. Against strict ironclad museum protocol, Abath pressed the button and buzzed them through the employee side entrance, the one that he had just opened and closed. And this is where it begins to take off. So as the two officers walked up to the security desk and said, "How's it going? How are you doing today?" They looked at him and said, "You look familiar. I think we have a warrant out for your arrest." So just think about that. You haven't done anything. You've had a pretty quiet life. You kind of keep to yourself, and you have a warrant out for your arrest. So, of course, Abath is going to be confused, and he's a little bit spooked by this, and he steps out from behind the security desk, which was the only spot in the entire lobby equipped with a panic button. So that moves him away from that, and that connected them directly to the police if there ever was an issue. The moment he stepped out, the men pinned him against the wall, they put handcuffs on him, and ordered him to call his partner Eric Hansen down to the lobby. And within minutes, both young guards were taken to the museum's dark basement. The thieves wrapped duct tape around their eyes so they couldn't see, their mouths so they couldn't talk, and their hands so they couldn't get out of it. And they handcuffed them to heating pipes. And as the thieves prepared to head upstairs, one of them turned to the guards and they said, "This is a robbery, gentlemen. Don't give us any trouble and you won't get hurt." But then he said something that haunts the investigators to this very day. He said, "You will be getting a reward in a year." Very strange. So this is what happened at that night. So this is how they got rid of the guards. They were able to kind of lock them away. And what followed was 81 minutes of methodical, calculated destruction. Thanks to the museum's internal motion sensors, which logged activity onto hard drives, we can track the thieves' exact footsteps through the dark galleries that night. So right off the bat, they head straight to the second floor, entering what's called the Dutch Room. This is the room that held some of the most historic treasures in human history. They targeted Dutch master Rembrandt van Rijn, specifically his 1633 masterpiece, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. And that's Rembrandt's only known seascape. Okay, that's his only known portrait. Because the heavy wooden frame was bolted securely to the wall, the thieves violently yanked it off the wall and they slammed it onto the floor, and they used sharp utility blades to slice the canvas straight out of its backing. So they weren't able to take the actual frame apart, they just sliced it out, cut it out, and took it. And they did the exact same thing to Rembrandt's A Lady and Gentleman in Black, as well as a tiny self-portrait etching. Next, they turned their attention to Johannes Vermeer. They grabbed his masterpiece, The Concert. There are only 34 known Vermeer paintings in existence globally, right? So this is a very rare painting, making The Concert one of the most single valuable objects that was stolen at the time. And this was estimated at over $250 million by itself. So this was a very, very famous portrait, very worth tons of money at the time. But then it takes a deep, strange turn, this heist. Okay, so hanging in the nearby Raphael room was the Titian, The Rape of Europa. And this was by far the most valuable painting in the entire museum. The worth of this thing was huge. But here's what's really strange about this. The thieves decided to completely ignore it. They didn't touch it at all. Instead, they grabbed an ancient Chinese bronze vessel known as the Gu, and that's 5 small paper sketches by French impressionist Edgar Degas, and a small bronze eagle finial off the top of an authentic Napoleonic battle flag. They spent minutes trying to unscrew the entire flag frame off the wall, but they were unable to do so. So they settled at the time for unscrewing the eagle right off the top. Okay, so here we go down into the blue room. Edward Manet's famous oil painting, Chez Tortoni, was stolen. But here's the bizarre twist in this one. Motion sensors in the room never registered movement while the thieves were actually in the building. The only footprint registered in that room all night belonged to Rick Abath during his earlier 1 a.m. security walk. So think about that. It caught Abath in that room at 1 o'clock, but it did not sense anything when that picture was actually taken, the Chez Tortoni, which is strange because if it worked at 1 a.m., why didn't it work about an hour later? So it's very strange, and that's why we're going to talk about Abath in a little bit. At 2:45 a.m., after making 2 separate trips to load up their getaway vehicle, which was located outside, the side door opened and closed for the final time, and the thieves vanished into the Boston night. And it wasn't until 8:15 the following morning, when the morning shift arrived, that the tied-up guards were discovered and the police were finally called. So this has been quite a night, a huge situation, and people are totally unaware of it until about 8:15 in the morning. So there's a bunch of flags, red flags going up about this whole thing right now. Some of it adds up, some of it doesn't. Some of it makes you question whether the security guards were in on it, but who would want to be tied up, taped their eyes, taped their mouth, taped so they can't see, they can't do anything. So it makes you question just a few things that were going on. So when the FBI stepped in, they were stunned by the contradictions. On one hand, spending 81 minutes inside a crime scene showed incredible composure. But on the other hand, slicing priceless canvases out of frames and leaving glass smashed across the floor showed crude amateurism. Like they weren't prepared to actually do the job. They hadn't done this before, so this is something totally new to them. And it was kind of like a quick, let's just get it and get out kind of thing. So naturally, the investigators scrutinized the inside job angle first. Rick Abath, and this is the security guy, he was interrogated endlessly. Why did he open that side door at 1 a.m. in the morning and quickly close it? Why was Manet's Chez Tortoni taken from a room where motion sensors only tracked his feet, not the thieves? In 2015, the FBI even released security footage from the night before the heist, showing Abath letting an unidentified man in a jacket into a closed museum late at night. So there's a lot of strange things following Abath. Unfortunately, and this is where we're kind of left in the unknown, Abath maintained his innocence until his death in February of 2024, just over 2.5 years ago. Federal authorities never found physical evidence linking him to this crime. They never found hidden money or stolen goods connecting him to this crime. And lead agents eventually concluded that the guards were simply young, terrified, and outmatched at the time. So, if it wasn't an inside job, who actually pulled this off? So, over 3 decades of international investigation, 3 primary theories emerged from this heist. Theory number 1 is the New England Mafia. In 2013, the FBI made a dramatic public announcement that they were confident they knew who the thieves were, pointing directly to a Boston crew affiliated with mobster Carmelo Merlino. The primary suspects were mafia enforcers, David Turner and George Reisfelder. Reisfelder closely matched the police sketch of the slimmer thief, and the relatives later reported seeing a painting resembling Manet's Chez Tortoni hanging in his apartment before his death in 1991. So he died 1 year after this actually took place. David Turner matched the second thief's description, but when Turner was arrested by the FBI in 1999 for an unrelated bank vault robbery, federal agents offered him a deal. Return the Gardner paintings and you can walk out of prison a totally free man. You're good to go. But, and this is where one of those unknowns and we're kind of left with nothing, Turner insisted he had no idea where the art actually was. So, was he that proud of what he did? Did he maybe give the art to someone else and didn't want to start a whole ring of something that no one actually knew about? We don't know. Another mob figure that was key in this was Robert, the cook Gentile. Hopefully I'm saying that right. In 2012, federal agents raided Gentile, I'm going to try and get this, Gentile, his home in Connecticut, finding a concealed trapdoor beneath his backyard shed, police equipment, and handwritten paper listing the stolen Gardner paintings alongside their black market values. Gentile claimed he was framed and died in 2021 without ever surrendering a canvas. The Irish Republican Army, another persistent line of inquiry pointing toward notorious Boston mob boss James Whitey Bulger. While Bulger denied direct involvement, federal authorities suspected the stolen artwork was funneled through organized crime pipelines to the IRA in Northern Ireland to be used as financial collateral or political bargaining chips. And lastly, theory number 3, the master art thief blueprint. Myles Connor Jr., a legendary Boston art thief and rock singer, was sitting in a federal prison during the 1990 heist. So he was doing something else. But however, Connor had previously raided museums and claimed that he had meticulously planned a Gardner heist years earlier before it actually happened. This was handing the exact operational blueprint to his criminal associates before he was locked up. So he had the plans and they think maybe he handed it off to someone else before he was actually locked up. So today the case remains an open federal investigation. The FBI, along with the museum's head of security, Anthony Amore, tracks down fresh leads every year across the globe. The museum contains a $10 million reward for information leading directly to the safe recovery of all the art pieces, along with the standalone $100,000 reward for the return of the small Napoleonic eagle finial. Yet, as decade after decade slips past, the key suspects, mob informants, and witnesses continue to take their secrets straight to the grave. And that's where this is going to continue to go into the unknown, and this will never be solved. If you step foot into the Dutch room at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum today, you won't see empty walls or replacement art. You will see those massive, empty gilded frames hanging exactly where Isabella placed them over a century ago. And it's kind of sad, right? Because this is what she wanted. This was kind of her will, her testament to the future, to not touch her things and leave them. And there are empty frames. Under her terms of her will, those frames can never, ever be moved. They hang on the green silk walls as silent, haunting placeholder monuments, waiting one day for those paintings to be found. Unfortunately, we don't know where they're ever going to be, if they're ever going to be found. They're hoping that they may be hidden in a dusty attic, rotting beneath a floorboard, or lost to history forever. So it's pretty sad, and that's what we have for today's case on this heist. And it's one of those things where we're definitely not going to know what happens. And unless this is caught on camera, unless we have visuals of the actual suspects, I don't see that there's going to be a conclusion to this. It would take clearly a miracle. Maybe these paintings one day get handed down to the next generation. If they were involved in mobs, I'm sure no one's going to be willing to give it up, because as soon as you give up one in the mob, it becomes a huge network of people. And once the cards fall, the whole stack falls. So that's unfortunately where it's at. So as we wrap up today's case, it's worth reflecting on why this mystery continues to hold such a powerful grip in our collective imagination. Most true crime stories revolve around the tragic destruction of human life, but the Gardner heist represents a unique form of loss, the destruction of our shared human culture. Masterpieces that survived centuries of war, revolution in time were ripped away from the world in only 81 minutes, an hour and 21 minutes. The tragic irony of the art heist crimes is that the stolen goods become completely unusable. Whoever holds these masterpieces cannot sell them on the open market because if they do, clearly we'll know who's connected. They cannot display them in a living room, on a wall for guests to see. They are forced to live in dark storage boxes, never to be seen by the daylight ever again. So they're pretty much useless, and it's only about greed of why they would have them. Until someone finally steps forward, those empty frames in Boston will stand as quiet, unbreakable promises that we haven't stopped looking and that we still haven't forgotten here on the Border City Kids Unsolved. So thank you for listening to the Border City Kids Unsolved. I'm your host, Brian, and I hope you enjoyed this deep dive in. Make sure you please hit the follow, hit the like button, subscribe. Make sure you follow some of our other Unsolved mysteries because we love covering a new one every week. And it's always kind of interesting to hear some of the suspects and some of the reasons why, and maybe some of the updates to today, just to see where some of these cases at. And maybe, hopefully one day, with new knowledge that there'll be a lead of some sort to solve some of these crimes. So until next time, stay curious and keep your eyes open. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one, guys.